Throughout the past 2 years, we've seen a bull run in both new and used car prices. But according to some recent data, it seems like the car market is poised for a significant downturn. Hey everyone, it's Jonathan here, and let's discuss this data in more detail, as well as a couple of stories of individuals affected by the downturn in the car market, and some financial tips when it comes to buying a car. So let's get right into it. To understand where the car market is today and where it's going, we have to go all the way back to the beginning of 2021. And during that time, we started to have the reopening of the economy after all of the lockdowns that we had in 2020. And because of this, many people wanted to leave their homes. Due to all of the stimulus and the pent-up savings everyone had because they weren't doing activities that required them to leave their house. One of the things that people spent a lot of money on during the reopening was upgrading their vehicles. Now, during COVID, a lot of factories were shut down, so mostly because there was less demand for cars because of the lockdown, but also because of COVID itself. Because of that, a lot of car dealers had a very hard time meeting demand, which led to a pretty big discrepancy between supply and demand. And when you add all of this onto the fact that we had some of the lowest interest rates in the history of the economy, all of these factors caused prices to skyrocket, which is why in 2021 alone, we saw car prices go up by 23%. This left a lot of buyers in the market having to pay significant premiums. So when we fast forward to 2022, we did still continue to see this climb in prices. And Edmunds.com actually tells us that in Q4 of 2022, 16% of car buyers had payments over $1,000 a month, which was compared to the 10.5% we had in the year before, and then the 6% that we had in 2020 as well. So we basically saw almost a doubling every single year of this figure. But with the Fed launching their aggressive fight against inflation, pushing rates on new auto loans up from 5.1% in December of 2021, all the way up to 8% in December of 2022, according to data from Cox Automotive. When we combine that with the fact that supply chains are starting to improve from where they were at the beginning of 2021, we are starting to see auto prices turn to the downside, with prices falling from their September highs about 4%. Which erased about all of the gains that we saw from April 2021 all the way up to September, where car prices were at their peak. So with the pandemic stimulus boom behind us, some borrowers are left with payments that you just simply cannot afford. According to Fitch Ratings, 5.6% of subprime auto borrowers are 60 days or more late on their payments. And that's compared to the 2.5% read that we saw in April of 2021 and the 5.4% reading that we saw in January of 2009, during the height of the Great Recession. And this uptick in late payments has caused banks to react. Ally, which is the second largest auto lender in the United States, reported a 4x increase in charge-offs for the auto loans that they have. Whereas some banks like Fifth Third Bancorp are pulling back on originations and tightening lending standards for their auto loans. So I was reading through an article from Bloomberg and it was talking about a couple of stories about people who are either getting their cars repossessed or are about to get their car repossessed. And I saw some pretty glaring financial issues in all of these stories. And I just wanted to share some of them with you to kind of give some insight on this. And this isn't at all to shame these people because they are going through some very difficult situations, but it's just to bring some light on some practices that I don't think are very financially sound. So let's get into the first story here where we have a 21-year-old guy who has a 10-year-old Dodge Journey. And that car was costing about $1,000 a month in total with all costs of owning a car considered. And he had a 26% interest rate on his auto loan. Like a lot of us, inflation really squeezed him financially, and he eventually fell behind on payments. And this caused him to eventually get his car repossessed. Now, because he didn't have a car and he needed a car to go to work, he eventually got fired from his job as well. And he now has to come up with $1,100 plus all of his missed payments to be able to get his car back. So with this story, I think the glaring thing here is the 26% interest rate. You know, the thing about it is that a lot of times when I see people with these really high interest rates, it's usually because they don't have credit. And I think that building credit in America is very simple. I mean, all you have to do is just go to your bank that offers a secured credit card, and then you just get your secured credit card, and you go and you buy like a pack of gum with it every single month, or like a bottle of water or something. And then you just make sure that you make that payment on time every single month for like 9 to 12 months. And boom, you have a credit score. That's really the thing I have to say here is that it's not very hard to build up your credit. And I think everyone should have some kind of credit score on hand. It'll really help you avoid situations like this. So the next story we has a story of a 25-year-old guy who has newer Subaru WRX. He was making payments of about $550 a month on them. And like, again, the same situation, inflation is squeezing his budget and he eventually fell behind on payments. And again, he got his car repossessed. Now he has to walk to work, to his job as a post office employee. And he gets Uber rides and rides from friends to be able to buy groceries when he needs to. So I think the big thing here is the fact that, you know, the guy is 25 years old and he has a newer Subaru WRX, which for those of us who know what a WRX is, it's pretty much like a sports version of an Impreza, but it's significantly more expensive. And it's just one of those cars that you don't really need when you're that age. Like, yes, like, trust me, I like Subarus as well, but like, I'm not spending $550 a month on car payments, especially if I'm work at a post office where I'm probably making somewhere around $55,000 to $60,000 a year. It just isn't a sustainable car payment to keep making. Now, if this guy made like $120,000, then so be it. Who cares if he's paying $500 for a car payment? But when you're making 60, it's a pretty significant chunk of your budget. When you're young, you should really avoid spending money on stuff like that because it could really put the squeeze on you when you want to go and maybe buy a house or maybe go and start investing in the stock market or start using your money for other ways to make money when you're using all of your money to make a car payment. So, you know, a car that is going down in value every single year. Because even though over the past 2 years, we have seen car prices go up even on used cars, in like a normal world, that doesn't happen. Cars lose value because they're machinery. They're meant to lose value over time and eventually die out. They're not meant to last forever. Another comment I'll make here is that, like, you know, walking to work, especially if you live close by, isn't really a bad idea. I mean, even if you do have a car, because, you know, gas prices have come down from their peak, but they're still relatively expensive. And if you could avoid putting wear and tear in your car, especially a car like a WRX, that does have a lot of saving benefit to you. I don't know, just something to think about there. This third story was about a 53-year-old lady who was in school to get a bachelor's degree in information technology. She had a 10-year-old Honda Fit that she was making about $200 a month payments on, but she was splitting these payments up with her roommate. And her roommate did lose their job, and they both fell behind on the payment to this car. Now, even though, yes, I went to school before, I understand how tough it is to make money while you're going to school full time. But one thing like I would never suggest to anyone is to ever get into a financial agreement with someone you're not married to. Unless if you're married to them, or you gave birth to them, or you're their legal guardian, you should never make a financial contract with someone else. And even if they are your child, there's like an asterisk on that one. That would probably be the biggest comment I have on this. Now, this lady hasn't gotten her car repossessed, but she is behind on payments, so she's kind of hiding her car from the repo people. Some other suggestions I have is that, honestly, if you could just outrightly avoid buying a car, just do that. I mean, I will tell you as somebody who owns a very kind of economical car, the amount of money I spend on my car in terms of maintenance, gas, and all these other things is so high. It's just like I look at it every single month and I just think to myself, man, if I had this money invested into something, it would be so much better than me spending it on a freaking car. So if you can avoid a car, do it. I know that there's a limited portion of Americans that can actually go about their everyday lives without car ownership, but if you can, seriously consider it. And if you do have to buy a car, I would say you should just buy like a beater car in cash. You know, I had a family member who lived in LA, and for those of you who've ever driven to LA before, you know how hectic it can be and how very easy it is for you to end up in an accident. So they had like a beater car that they just drove around LA, and I think eventually they got into an accident. They just took the car and they went to the junkyard, sold it for parts, used the money to go buy another junk car, and just drove that junk car around town. I don't know. You know, it's not the sexiest thing in the world. I know it's not like the fancy Mercedes, but it works. And the whole goal of a car is to get you from point A to point B at the end of the day. If you want something that's maybe not as unreliable, maybe you buy a car that's like a couple years older and you don't buy a new car. Now, I know recently the new and used cars have kind of been in the same place price-wise, but honestly, I really believe within the next year or two, we're going to see a return to normal, and we're going to see that discrepancy between new and used cars start to move away from each other. So that's basically all I got for you guys in this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.